Hey guys, how's it going? Calvin and Adam here tonight with photography systems and discussion. Um, we're going to start off tonight by talking about a recap of what we did last week, and then we're going to actually talk about outdoor photography and some of the tools that you use in order to create that. So, how's it going today, Adam?
Doing pretty well. How are you doing?
Not bad at all. I want to start off the show by telling everybody go ahead and use the Q&A section, and we'll get questions popped up inside of the Hangout, and then we'll be able to respond to those to you live and on the air. And if you don't get your question asked live because you're watching on the replay on YouTube or in the Hangout in the event, go ahead and comment, and we'll be able to respond to those as well. So we're going to go ahead and start off with a recap for last week. Last week we talked a little bit differently about photography. We talked about our mannerisms and being clean when you're out in public and dealing with the people and things of that nature. So last week the guy who had Ebola out here in the Dallas area, he passed away. And now it looks like we have two more people that are now symptomatic with the Ebola virus out here. So it was definitely a good topic to talk about cleanliness. Do you have anything you want to add into it, Adam?
Uh, Being clean is always good, especially during the flu season. And I've also read about kids getting what is it, foot and mouth disease, where it's just where they're spreading illnesses from one kid to the next. And especially right now, it's always a good idea to have some hand sanitizer or some soap with you just to make sure your hands are clean, make sure your arms are clean, especially when you go in and outside of um, public places. You're not sure if the person behind you washed their hands or not. It may have a lot of germs and may have the cold or flu or whatnot. So it's a good idea just to keep some hand sanitizer or something to keep clean all the time.
Yep. Awesome. So this week we have a topic that we want to talk about. I actually spent a little bit of time this weekend actually working on it. And the important factor is working with outdoor photography and some of the tools that you'll use in order to capture good pictures. Um, so by default, you want to have a camera, and the camera really depends upon what you have available in your arsenal of supplies. It could be something as simple as a point and shoot camera. It could be a disposable camera. You can do film. You can also do digital and different variations there. But you want to have your tool, and it's very important when you're shooting outdoor photography to work on your understanding of light, because basically that's what a picture is capturing of light with the amount of either overexposed, underexposed, or spot on with your amount of light. Now, underexposed means that your picture is going to be a little bit dark or darker than a good lit picture, and then overexposed means that it's going to be rather bright than a good lit picture. So you can kind of think of it on a scale between 0 as being a very well lit picture, it looks very clear, and then 10 is going to be an overly bright picture, and -10 would be a very dark picture. I would put a +10 as being bright and it's basically white, and a -10 is basically being dark and you can't see anything. There's a number of different things that you can do to control this, but in most SLR systems, they have a light meter that's built into them. It's really good on the digital cameras, and it's gotten better over the years. And a lot of point and shoot cameras, as well as cell phone cameras, they actually do a good job with the auto functionality built into it. So you basically point at it, and you're going to get very close with getting to 0. And if you're on a DSLR, if you're shooting on the manual, typically the bottom of your viewfinder will have a little bar, and it's going to show you where your lighting is at. It's either going to be over to the left, to the right, or it's going to be in the center. Now, if you're shooting in automatic mode, primarily it's going to always be inside the center if you're in a decently lit environment. If your environment that you're in is too bright, then it's going to be able to compensate down based on your equipment, or if it's too dark, it's going to compensate up based on it. But that lighting setting with the automatic is basically built upon the equipment that you have. So in an SLR environment, it's going to be what the capabilities of your sensor is in regards to your ISO or your light sensitivity, the lens with the aperture on how big or small it's able to get with the amount of light that comes in and out of it, or your shutter speed with how fast it actually can shutter or come across the frame to provide your lighting. So there's different factors that goes into it, and it's a lot of technical things with it that could be broken down to be considered rather easy once you get more experience with utilizing it. So you want to take your gear out, and if you're using automatic mode, it's a good chance you're going to capture a good lit picture. If you're going to play with the manual mode, you want to start learning how to adjust your shutter speed and your aperture to control the amount of light that comes in to capture the scene how you want to have it captured. Do you have any input you want to share there, Adam?
When it comes to getting a well-lit photo, one thing a lot of people can do if they're just starting off is see if your camera has an auto mode. You just put it on that and take a few pictures. And as soon as you take the picture, look at the picture on the back of the screen. Some cameras will tell you what shutter speed and what the aperture was whenever it was taken. And that's a good idea to just take a look at that and then maybe move it to a manual mode if your camera supports that. Try to put it at the same shutter speed and same aperture. Try to take the picture again. And you might try increasing the shutter speed a little bit and take another picture. You'll notice that it gets a little bit darker with each bump in the shutter speed taking that same image. That's just to help you learn a little bit about overexposing and underexposing. You can also take the aperture and open up the aperture. You'll notice that from that same image, from the first image, once you open up the aperture a little bit, you'll notice it gets a little bit lighter with each picture you take after that. And it's a good idea to what was I going to say? It's a good idea to play around with the settings. Most of them may be a little dark or a little fuzzy, but this will help you learn the system. For instance, if you're in the evening and you're outside, you take a picture handheld at 1/10 of a second. Well, once you look at that image on the screen, it may be evenly lit, but you'll notice a little bit of camera motion blur, just because usually when you're shooting it at 1/10 of a second or 1/5 of a second or even a full second, even when you just push down on the shutter, your hand is going to move just a little bit. Now, of course, if you're going to be shooting anything under a 1/60th of a second, it's probably a good idea to have a tripod. But, of course, this is just tips to help make sure that your pictures turn out a little bit better.
Yep. Hey, Chris, how's it going today? Caught you off guard there, huh?
Oh. Hello, hello.
Hey. We was just going over outdoor photography and some of the beginning steps in taking a picture. Talked a little bit about the different equipment with a DSLR, an SLR, or even working with film cameras and the different setting functions and things to look at to really get a good idea of what type of picture you're taking. You have any tips you want to add in there, Chris?
I don't know what you covered, so I'll go moving forward. I'll respond to it, but right now I don't know what you guys covered, so.
Okay, no problem. Hey, Gwen, how's it going today?
Oh, been a busy day, but all is well.
Awesome. Yeah, busy day here as well. So different things to continue on what Adam was talking about the different settings there. When you're dealing with your shutter speed, that's going to control the amount of light that comes into your lens, but it's also going to control the motion inside of your pictures. So you can catch the blur of someone walking if you go down to like a 1/30th of a second, or you can actually freeze frame water if you go up to 1/1000th of a second. So the different shutter controls the amount of motion that you're actually seeing there. Another thing is with your aperture, that controls your light, but it also controls your depth of field. So if you're shooting with a really wide open aperture setting like f1.2, f2.8, you're getting a lot of light with those pictures, but you also get a very low depth of field involved with your pictures. For an example, when you deal with a f1.2, I can focus in on my nose here, and I can actually have my ears completely blurred out because of the depth of field is so shallow. Whereas if I'm shooting something with a very small aperture, or say a f32, I get a lot of depth of field inside of that picture, but also I get less light in there, so I actually need to have a slower shutter speed in order to compensate for the amount of light that comes in. So these are how the aperture and how the shutter speed work together that you will actually use with experience and practice to be able to capture exactly what you see how you want to see it. So you can adjust the shutter speed up and down to control the amount of light as well as the movement in the picture, and you can adjust your aperture or your f-stop up and down to control the amount of light as well as control the depth of field of what's in focus inside your picture. So that's just basic uses of the camera there. Every camera does it slightly different, but amongst the vendors, they typically do it the same. So once you figure out how to work and manipulate it on a Canon, it's going to always work the same with most of the Canons. And once you learn how to do it on the Sony, or you learn how to do it on the Nikon, or how you do it on the Olympus or Fuji, it's going to be the same process that you go through, similar process from one to another with each camera body that you deal with. So when you're looking at your cameras out there, when you get into the SLR arena, the functionality is important. That's why I encourage people to rent them to see which one works the easiest for how you actually like to use the camera. They all basically have the same trigger button to press the button to take the picture, but how you interact with the menus is going to be slightly different from one to the other. So there's never going to be a one-shot everybody enjoys the exact same features and functionality. So once you get your camera decided and you go out there and you get those pretty decently lit pictures, you might want to start experimenting with different things inside of the picture that you're able to capture. Now, one thing that a camera has is called a dynamic range that it can actually compensate with viewing properties. And by default in those dynamic ranges, they're very much smaller than what we can see with our human eye. Our human eye, we can basically go from 1 to just a number at will, say 20,000, and we can see all these different depths of light and imagery between darkness and brightness with depths and things of that nature, and our eyes automatically can compensate for them on the fly. Our camera is basically a computer and a digital or even a film representation of that range, and it's not as deep as what our eyes can do. And typically cameras can do about 5,000 out of that 20 at any point in time in the picture. So it gets to a certain point with the darkness where everything fades into the same darkness, or brightness, and everything fades into the same brightness, but our eyes can compensate the differences. And one of the easiest things to do to recognize this is to find underneath a tree. So you take a picture and say probably 50 feet away from the tree, and make sure it's a tree that's during the full time of summer, that way you have all the full leaves on it, and take a picture. And then once you take that picture, zoom in on it and look underneath the tree and see the darkness that's underneath there, and then look up above the tree and see the brightness on there, and then remember in your mind how that darkness and that lightness played out, and then see how the camera was able to interpret it. Your camera will have a struggle, and it will not be able to get spot on what you can see visually with your eyes, and that's because it has a lower depth range associated with it. Photographers and computer people, all those smart brainiacs that create our digital SLRs, they created what's called a high dynamic range function that started out on the computers with being able to take multiple different ranges of a picture and layer them together and creating it, and now it's actually out on camera. So you can actually get this on a lot of cell phones that have smartphones, operating systems built into them, where you can take what's called a HDR, or a high dynamic range. And the first beginnings of these created surreal style pictures where they look kind of cartoonish. And that was based on the algorithms that people was using at that time. But it's gotten better. Some people are hyper abusive of it, and they create these weird surreal pictures that people just can't stand. And then other people look at those pictures and totally in awe with what they see, and they totally love it. So it's a personal touch when it comes to creating HDR images. Anybody here in the panel have any experience with HDRs?
I have a little bit, but I usually just create it from multiple images. When I work with HDR, I usually bracket images from my camera on a tripod, and that's just taking the same image over and over and over of the same scene, one being a little bit brighter, all the way up to what it normally is, and down to where it's a little bit darker. And then, of course, you could take that into programs like Photoshop or GIMP or any photo manipulation program, and where you can bracket it and make the shadows come up a little bit more, and you're able to darken some of the brighter areas just to make sure that the picture has color throughout the whole image and not areas that are too dark where you can't bring them up, or where it's too light where, say for instance, the sun or the sky is completely blown out.
Yep.
Well, when I've tried to do HDR, I've had to use the tripod and the timer setting on it to get it still, because just holding the camera, I found out that it blurs it. It doesn't work correctly. So when I've tried to shoot HDR, like I said, I pulled out the tripod and the timer, and that's the only way I could really get it to get a good shot with it.
And how about you, Chris?
I've done some playing around, but it's really not my cup of tea. It's too much. I don't know. It's too much post-processing, I think. I just don't like spending that much time on images, on post-processing, and I don't know. It's just resource hogging, so it's not my favorite thing to do. But as far as tripod, yeah, tripod helps. But if you're shooting during the day, I shot a couple months ago. I shot one where it was, I think it was like a 1200th of a second handheld, and everything lined up perfectly, I think. But if you're doing like, say, 200th, you might see some motion and images not lining up correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I've done it a few times. I've done it with my cell phone, and the pictures turn out pretty cool sometimes. And I've also done it with the camera, and when I started playing with it on the camera with the DSLR, I did it mostly out of fun, didn't really know everything that I was doing. I just basically click, 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 and play with it from that point. I personally am similar with it. I don't like spending a lot of time with it because it's not really my cup of tea. I like to shoot as much as possible with minimum requirement for me to sit on the computer for hours to do anything. So now when I take my time with doing my pictures, I do my best to focus on just that. What is it that it's going to take for me to capture the best picture with the least amount of work that you're going to have to do to produce the image to give to anybody to take a look at. But also, one thing we haven't discussed, and I was thinking maybe one of you guys would have brought up, Google actually offers a HDR functionality that they automatically do with their Auto Awesome, where you can upload pictures and they'll do a HDR spin on the picture if they deem that it can be used by that enhancement. And you'll get a little notification talking about, hey, your picture's been Auto Awesome, and then you can take a look at it. So that's something kind of cool that for people who don't maybe have the time for access to a computer or don't have the skill set to work with the different software, they can put it inside of Google, inside of the Google Plus, and then they can play around with the different photo options that show up in there, and they can potentially get them a pretty cool little HDR out of it.
Oh, and sometimes, depending on the type of picture I have, Snapseed. I have the Snapseed app on my phone and on my iPad, and every now and then I will use that to see how it can enhance a picture.
Yep. Snapseed is something mobile, and it's something that's free on the Android system as well as the Apple system. It's not available on other platforms such as Windows Phone or anything like that. But they also have functionality as plugins that work with Photoshop and programs that support Photoshop plugins. I do believe that there's a cost associated with the Nik plugins. But if you do spend a lot of time on the computer and you like some of the functionalities that they offer, I think it's a good investment to look at the plugins and see if they work out for you. Plugins can really save you time on Photoshop if you spend enough time in Photoshop. Another tool that you can utilize when you're outdoors taking pictures, we talked about the tripod. That's important when you want to get long exposure shots, or if you want to get shots where you want to increase your shutter speed, or you can only decrease your shutter speed to a certain point. The tripod comes in handy because you can get that little slight shutter shake when you press and release the timer on the trigger on your camera. So the slower your shutter speed is, the more camera shake you get in there. So it's good on your camera if you toggle the taking a picture setting from the default where you press it and immediately go off to, if it allows it, a 1 second or 2 second release. Or if you like to jump into your pictures when you get an opportunity, your camera may support a 10-second or 15-second before it takes the picture. And you can press the button, focus on something, press the button down, and then the timer countdown will tick down. And you can run and jump in your picture and, enhance your selfie collage with something that you actually think out there is pretty cool. It's always fun to jump inside of a picture that you think is cool, after you capture the scene. And yeah, go ahead and jump in the picture and and have some fun. And that adds to your personal collection where you can look back later on. You print out that nice big 24-inch by 36-inch picture of the scene that you was capturing, but then you have that memory of being able to see yourself jump in that scene too. Another tool that I like to talk about is not a requirement. None of the things are really a requirement for taking pictures outside of a camera. But if you get the opportunity to work with lights, getting a portable battery supply and plugging in lights while you're outdoors can really enhance the picture. How it can do that, this weekend I went out and took some pictures with one of my fellow photographers, and I brought my portable lights with me, and I had a portable battery supply that I hadn't used yet. So I was like, I'm going to take this with me. I'm going to try it out and see how it goes. It took me about a good 15-20 minutes to get it all set up, if that. And boom, I was able to click off and take pictures, and I was able to actually capture the subject as well as a blue sky background, which is sometimes difficult to get when you're shooting with natural light because you're compensating for the person, and that person could potentially be brighter than what the lighting allows for you to capture the background. So by doing that, or even darker, a lot of times when you get darker skinned people, from brown all the way up in the color shades, in order to really bring in their facial features, you have to brighten up your aperture settings, or you have to brighten up your shutter speed settings. But by doing that, you wind up blowing out your background scene, such as some trees, such as maybe some type of decoration that's put up, or even a beautiful sky, and you wind up losing that in the details because you have to compensate for the person, because ultimately the real beauty of taking pictures of the person is the person themselves. So by having some external lights, if you have that option available to you, you can really brighten up the opportunity and not lose detail in your picture, because your immediate foreground light will be based off of your lights that you have, and then you're able to compensate for all the background scene and come out with some nice pictures. Have any of you guys had an opportunity to work with some lights while you was out in the field?
No, I haven't unpacked mine.
How about you, Chris?
Like strobes, like if you have powerful enough flash, like even during daylight, you could like overpower the sun and get like a cool night effect. I've done that type of work, but during the daytime, I just mostly I used to have the 5-in-1 refractor that folds up to almost nothing.
Yeah.
I carry that.
Yeah, you have a 30-inch or a 20-inch, or what size do you have?
I think it's like a 50. It's pretty big.
Oh.
It's not a perfect circle, but it's more like an oblique. I don't know.
So you're out there compensating with your 52-inch one, huh?
Toss it up.
You got you a Corvette of the reflectors out there. That's cool. Yeah, those reflectors definitely come in handy. That's another tool that you can add to your box. Reflectors are definitely cheaper than having lights. Even a portable flash that goes on top of your camera, or a flash set. Portable reflectors, you can get them for less than $100. A lot of times you can find them for less than $50, depending upon the size. And they really come in handy because you don't need a stand. Whoever you're taking the picture with typically shows up with someone. Put them to work. Tell them to hold that reflector. Stand back. See how the light reflects off of them, and guess what? Hey, you need to move. Point it over there. I can't see. Yeah, that's one of the drawbacks with using being a one-man shop. When you go out there and take pictures and you got a reflector and things like that, you can get it all set up and it looks like you got it right, and then you go back into your position where you're going to take the picture, and then you realize up it's off to the left or it's off to the right, and then you want the subject to move, but then when they move you lose the background, and then you got to go back and move those different things. So having a third person that's there that's able to hold things and move things for you is definitely beneficial. Have you played with any lights there on the outside, Adam, whether it be a flash that's external to your camera or even some strobe sets?
Yeah, I've played with tons of lighting outside. Everything from my Nikon Speedlight to an Alien B strobe to multiple lights, reflectors, you name it. And one thing that I carry with me in every bag that I have is an umbrella. These are anywhere from $20 to $30, sometimes up to $75. But I usually carry a bunch of these with me all the time, because when you're outdoors and it's a really bright day, it's really easy to pop up an umbrella, hold it just over someone's head if you're taking their portrait. And whereas before, if they were looking in the direction where the sun is, and they might be squinting just a little bit, well, if you hold that umbrella up over your head, where it's just covering their face, one, it captures all their face, and it doesn't have any harsh shadows from excuse me. It doesn't have the harsh sunlight hitting their face and creating dark shadows underneath their eyes and nose and sometimes the bottom of their lips. And also it allows them to smile and be a little bit more natural. Also, when using these umbrellas, sometimes I'll use them outside in areas where there's shadows, and I'm trying to fill in just a little bit more light. Sometimes if I use just a bare speed light, I may notice a little bit of a harsh shadow behind them if there's a brick wall or a tree or something to that effect behind them. So if I put the speed light behind the umbrella just a little bit, then the light goes through here and it acts as a miniature softbox, more or less. And so I can retake the same picture, and it gets rid of that harsh shadow behind them, makes for a little bit better picture and a lot less time in post-processing.
All right, technical question, on the spot. What is that umbrella called? What does it do?
Grim. Grim's the
It's
light.
just a...
You say rim?
Do what?
No, Chris said something, I didn't hear him.
Oh, it's Grim's a light, but Scrim is the technical term, I guess. It basically blocks and softens the light.
Yeah, you broke out the rim word. I was looking for the D word, though.
Diffuser.
Yeah. Yeah, diffusing is basically breaking up the light and making it softer. So rim light, as Chris was speaking of, is actually typically where light and darkness cast behind someone. So you'll put a rim light behind the subject. What was that, Chris?
Scrim. S-C-R-I-M.
Yeah, rim light. Yeah, rim goes typically behind and casts that separation between that person and the background.
No, it's not rim light. Scrim. S-C-R-I-M.
Scrim, okay.
Scrim.
I haven't heard scrim in a while.
Basically, sun's pretty small light source, really, if you look at it. But if you have like that umbrella, or like my 5-in-1 reflector has a screen on there where you can block the sun, then that big old 50-some-odd inch scrim becomes the light source instead of just hard of the actual sun.
Yep. Yeah, one of the cool things you want to do with lighting is, and these all are called modifiers at the end of the day. They modify your light source. Very generic term. It has multiple uses, multiple things fit into it. But ultimately, that's what they're looking to do. You know, when you're dealing with a reflector, you're modifying that harsh direct light, and you're deflecting softer light back onto your subject that may be a little bit more focused. Or if you're dealing with an umbrella, you're diffusing that light and providing a softer light onto your subject. There's multiple ways of doing this. There's no one shot that's going to always work in every scenario and every environment. So taking the time to learn what each one of those steps offer is actually pretty good, because it helps you become better at, and ultimately I tell people, learn outdoor lighting. If you learn outdoor lighting, indoor lighting becomes super easy, because outdoor lighting changes so much. It's very dramatic. It's very dynamic. When you're dealing with a studio lights, it's going to always pretty much be the same. So if it's too bright, you adjust something, and now it's not as bright. But when you're dealing with the sun and you're dealing with outdoors, cloud cover, clouds moving by, all these different things offer different dynamics for your pictures. You can't be stationary when you're outdoor shooting pictures, whether it be a person or a tree or a building. So you got. What you saying, Chris?
I think Adam was gelling his camera.
Yeah, I saw the purple and I was like, did you unplug your cable somehow?
Gelling.
Yeah.
Playing with your RGB and manipulating, huh?
Yeah, also speaking of light modifiers, another thing that you can do while experimenting and playing around with light sources is getting a pair of gels to go with your lights. A lot of companies make gel sets. This just happens to be one for speed lights to put on your off-camera flash. And what you can do is you can the light that when you take a picture, that'll have a different shape.
You're actually covering your microphone so we couldn't hear you.
Sorry. Basically, whenever you take the picture, it'll be a little bit purple or a little bit green or a little bit orange, and this can help out, especially if when it comes to right now the fall time of the year. Pretty soon the leaves will start turning red, yellow, orange, and sometimes you may have a little bit of a cooler background, like a blue or a dark purple background. Well, you can easily get a red filter, put that on your light, and all of a sudden it adds a little bit of a red tint to the background, warms it up, and it'll match with that reds, oranges, yellows. So
Totally awesome. Having gels is definitely something new to play with.
mm-hmm.
Alrighty. So outdoor photography is very dynamic. There's definitely a bunch of different things that you can do to have fun out there with photography. But the main thing that you want to start out with is your camera. You don't need to have hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of gear and equipment, but you do want to have hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of passion to invest into it. And when you get into the equipment side of it, we haven't even begun to discuss the concept of the computer side of it. What all is it that you do on the computer to truly change the dynamic of your picture? You can take pictures that are very on point, sharp, crisp, and very well lit, and you can change the mood and the feel. You can also do the same thing with pictures that were taken that, you ran into having something go across your camera or something caused it to change for whatever it may be, and you can actually get on the computer and improve some of those functionalities. So your extra tools is not limited to your desktop any longer, because Photoshop is the king there. But there's a lot of other third-party people out there besides Adobe that create great products to do image manipulation with. And now, since the devices are starting to get more and more powerful, you can utilize things such as tablets, whether it be an Android tablet, whether it be an Apple tablet, whether it be a Windows tablet, as well as your mobile phones. There's a bunch of apps out there. As the cameras have improved on devices, so has the tools that out there allow for you to actually take those works of art that you capture and actually make something even better. So do you guys have any mobile tools that you use? Let's start with you, Adam.
Just like Gwen mentioned earlier, I use Snapseed for editing shots that I take with my cell phone, or even when I take some pictures with my DSLR and then upload them to my phone while I'm out in the field. And I just want to do a quick edit. I use Snapseed 90% of the time. It's great for making quick adjustments to brightness, contrast, temperature, cropping, just all the basics that you normally use. But if I need to do anything beyond that, I usually just wait until I get home, put it on my computer, open up Lightroom, and just start editing from there.
All right. How about you, Chris? Any mobile tools that you use?
I use this GoCam app. It's pretty good. It's got like preset already built in, and then you can, on top of that, go in there and tweak each and every little settings, anything from like sharpness to just whole 9 yards. It's pretty robust. And also the Google version of the camera app, it's pretty neat.
Yep. Yeah, I'm using Android right now primarily for my mobile devices. I have 2 Android phones, and I have an Android tablet. I was utilizing an iPad before, and that's actually when I first started playing around with mobile apps. I picked up an iPhone 4S because everybody talked about how great the iPhones was. And when I got into the App Store with the photography apps, I just found that there was too many different apps out there for me to play with. And I was like, wow, this is like a kid in a candy store. I can do all these cool, crazy things with my pictures. And I can't think of the app, Hipstamatic. That's the name of the app. One of my friends out in, I used to work with out here in Texas. He now works out in Washington, and he was like, yeah, you got to get the Hipstamatic app. It's totally awesome. And he wasn't even a photographer, and he knew I was in the photography, so I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. I'm like, $2? I don't want to spend no money on their app. I'm like, I'm good. I got the reading across on it, and then he talked to me again, and I went on and spent the $2. I was like, this is totally worth it. I'm glad I did pick this up. I really like the fact that it worked on my iPad as well as my iPhone. So I had it installed on both. You get to pick up all these different, with the Hipstamatic app, different cameras. So basically different films, different bodies, which I would never buy the bodies because to me at the end of the day, the body is something that you can only see inside the app. It doesn't go into the creation process. But it also has different lenses. And what Hipstamatic did, and the only thing I disliked about the Hipstamatic, it may have changed over the years, but every picture but if you purchase these different lenses and these different film packs, you get different effects with your pictures. So in essence, you can buy the lens pack or this film pack that mimics the different style of lens and film. So it takes you back to the days of analog, where you can get different film and get different effects from it, as well as different lens. And I really enjoyed it because it brought about creativity for me, because they have a setting in there where you can turn it on, and every time you shake it, it changes your lens, it changes your film, and it's unknown to you until you take a picture. So I would literally go out there and take a picture of something, shake the camera, take a picture again, shake the camera, take a picture again, and I was able to create 4 different pictures of the exact same thing by simply shaking it. And another cool thing that it did was it actually developed the picture. So it took the image that you've seen and then it ran it through its processes internally, and then it developed it into your film roll. And I like that because it was fun. It allowed you to also share it from there to these different web connections that was built into the app you can log into. So I was able to post pictures up to Twitter, I was able to post pictures to Facebook and all these different third-party sites all at once. So literally when I get home, I connect it to my Wi-Fi and I would select click, 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 and give it a name and say upload. And then boom, it'll go out to all these different sites and upload these pictures. And I'm like, this is cool. So that was my first app. And then someone else told me about Snapseed. And I like Snapseed more just for the simple fact, and this is before Google had purchased them and made it free. But Snapseed gave me control over the picture, so I was the one who was creating the mood, the look, the feel, the style, and the picture with it. And I enjoyed that fact. So those were my 2 favorite apps mobile. Hipstamatic stayed on the Android platform, not on the Android, on the iPhone platform. They created a variation for the Windows Phone, but I don't think that went anywhere because I haven't heard too much about it since then. But as far as I understand, they haven't dived into the Android platform. When Google purchased Nix Software, they then turned around and took the Snapseed product and went from a paid program to a free program. And then they also put it on the Android platform, and then they integrated those features and functionality into Google Plus as well. So that's some of the things I actually use a lot on a mobile device with, and I started actually diving out into doing more. I was one of those guys where, hey, I'm just going to get on the computer and do my work. Why? I got these 2 big screens, I got all this horsepower, I got all this RAM, and then I got to the point where I got tired of being on the computer. And I'm always on the go with my iPad or I have my tablet, so I can actually do this stuff on there. Something I recently got introduced to was PixArt. And I haven't really played around with PixArt. I started on my tablet and I dibble-dabble with it. I opened it up for the first time because I wanted to create a collage. And I had a collage app on my Android that the developer decided to take the originally designed product, which worked flawlessly, and he upgraded it. And then he made it free, and then he left it broke. And because I wasn't paying attention to it, the application actually updated on my tablet, and it went to the broke state. And I didn't know it was broke because I wasn't using it. I was using my iPad. And now I don't have a collage program for my Android. So I'm like, this sucks. If I want to do any type of collages of pictures, I got to get it onto my iPad. So I don't really do collages of pictures very much. But PixArt, I did it, and it was pretty snappy, pretty easy to do. So I think I have to revisit that some more. But one of the things I've been interested in is putting a little signature on the pictures that I share online. And the only way I can see to really do that with ease is with Photoshop on the desktop. Do you guys have any mobile programs that you use that enable that functionality?
PhotoGene worked flawlessly for me. It's very easy to use, and it didn't take long to learn it, and just go with it.
PhotoGene, Gene?
Yep, PHOTOGENE.
Okay. Anybody else have something they use?
No.
Yeah, I haven't spent much time exploring. I spend too many hours working now. Anywhere from 10 to 12 hours a day in the office, sitting at the computer working. By the time I get home, the last thing I really think about is sitting on the computer at home working on pictures.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my next. What'd you say?
Usually whenever I'm finished taking photos, whether it's with point and shoot or with my DSLR or video camera, first thing I usually do as soon as I get home is I'll pop the memory card into the computer, create a folder, and even if I don't work on them for a day or two or a couple of days, I'll just create a folder, throw them in there, and then be done with it, just so that I can grab that memory card and put it back in and it's ready to go just in case something else comes up.
Yeah, that's one of my habits. I actually, every time I take pictures, once I download the pictures to my computer, I very rarely leave pictures on memory cards. That's one of my things. That's why my father, who decided he wanted to get into digital and take pictures, he was like, hey, it's cheaper for me to buy a memory card than it is to delete the pictures off and put them on the computer. So he has literally 10 8 gig cards. He has like 4 32 gig cards. And I'm like, Dad, you can actually download the pictures off of that card, delete it, and then you can use the card over. Like, oh no, I always have problems with my computer, so no, I'm just going to leave it on the memory card. I'm like, okay, that works for you. But for me, typically I create a folder based on the date. So like I put the year, which is 14 this year, 2014, and I'll put the month, 10 for October, and then 01 for the first. And that's going to be the starter for it, so that way I can always look at my pictures chronologically by looking at the date. But after I put the date on that folder, I then put more detailed information. So like if I took pictures of Gwen, I would say Gwen photos. Or if I took pictures of Chris, Chris photos. Or if it's a family, I'll put, the Sutton family or the Song family. That way I can be able to use it by my normal human instincts of going down through and reading it. But I can also chronologically look back and know when I took the pictures. Back when I was shooting my days and my model pictures, I would put each photo with the model name, and then inside of the folder with the model name, I would then put the date format in which how I took when I took the pictures of the model. And underneath there, I typically would have my pictures in two formats. I would have them in a JPEG format, which is what I would give to the client, and then I would have them in the RAW format, which is what I took straight off the camera. And then once I pick out the pictures that I'm going to do retouching, I'll create another folder called TIFF, and basically every RAW picture that I actually going to retouch, I would convert it out to a TIFF file so I can actually work with it on Photoshop. So I would use that common structure for all of my pictures. So most of the photos where I have pictures dating back from 2000, well actually, yeah, 2000. They all have that same format where they have the date on there, and then inside of there they'll have a JPEG or a TIFF or a RAW, or they'll have another photo that has more details. So pictures of people, they might have 6 or 7 photos inside of there, and each one of them have the same structure with the RAW files, the TIFF files, and then the JPEG files. And that way I keep the format going so I can easily go through and search. One of the things I wanted to do years ago, I think it was Photoshop 2, CS2, and they came with a program called Bridge. And I was going to use that program to categorize all my pictures and give details, such as this person had on a yellow top and green pants, and it had purple flowers, and then I can use a search for pictures that have yellow flowers or green pants or purple tops or whatever it may be, and I can find all the pictures that have that. And once I realized that I was jumping into a rabbit hole that's going to have me on the computer for hours on end trying to catalog all these pictures, I threw that idea out the window. I like, yep, I'm going to go ahead and stick with the format that I have everything in now. Look back based on the year, look back based on the person and the subject, and I'm going to be good at that point. Because cataloging could be a job all in itself. Right now I'm ripping through my DVD collection, and I have to catalog all of that, and yeah, cataloging is no fun.
Yeah, cataloging isn't very fun, but you know, when you mentioned Bridge, I actually use Bridge and Lightroom together, and I have a folder where I have just random things. I mean, everything from like trees to cement textures to different grass to baseballs to car parts to everything. Because working in graphic design, I'm never sure when a client's going to want a picture of a fire hydrant to go on their postcard or a picture of a horse to go on their next mailing document. So being able to add a catalog word or a keyword or something where I can easily just do a quick search for it and be done and find it real quick saves a lot of time. But it's just like you said, it takes a lot of time starting out, and over the years it can add up so much where it may take you a couple of days or a couple of weeks to add keywords to it. But most of the time, I'm just like you. If it's a family or portrait or street photography, I'll just name a folder, with portrait pictures with the month and year and leave it there. Because most of the time I'm not looking for exact phrases. Like, I don't need to know that there's a tree in the background and there's a red car in the background, or there's a two-story house right next to a one-story house. I don't need to know all that. So just little things that may help some people out and others may not need to worry about.
Yeah, I, like you, I have no interest in doing it because I don't do graphic work. Trying to find that tree or trying to find that yellow flower or that green one, no, I don't have no interest. If I remember what's in the picture or the subject of the picture, I can find it, but trying to find that one, no, it's not going to happen. But cataloging, I admit, it has a strong usage for people who need to be able to go back and find different things that's contained inside those pictures that is not the subject of the picture. And I think it's totally cool to be able to catalog all those different details and then be able to search them out and find them. I just look at this like, man, how many man hours am I going to invest in that, and then how often am I going to use it? I look at that as my personal level of effort, not an investment I'm going to make. But when I see people do that, I'm like, man, that organization is awesome. You rock. You want to come do mine? But yeah, so cataloging is important. It goes into definitely when you do an outdoor photography. If you're into the cataloging, get started with it now. When I started with doing photography with my original point and shoot Nikon Coolpix 990, I literally was taking 200 pictures with that point and shoot with each time I went out and took pictures. And basically that 200 pictures was me going through, it took 4 AA batteries at a time. I went through two sets of those 4 AA batteries. So once I burned through 8 batteries, I was good. I wasn't taking no more pictures. I think I loaded that sucker up with an 8 gig memory card or a 4 gig memory card. And yeah, I didn't even touch the, I think probably 30% to 40% of the memory card with it. But I used to take a lot of pictures. And then when I went to the Canon 20D and that SLR, and I basically went to pressing a button and it took a picture, and pressing a button and took a picture, and I can rattle off 20 pictures, clack, 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 clack. Yeah, Calvin used to go out and shoot 300 to 500 pictures in an hour and a half, 2 hours of a person. And yeah, cataloging all that, nah, not going to happen. But starting cataloging now would be easier for me because I don't go out and take typically 200 pictures. I might take 50 pictures or 60 pictures in an hour and a half, 2 hours of shooting with a person. So cataloging for me would be much easier now. Going forward, cataloging, that might be something I invest in the future. It really depends upon how things go. But cataloging is important for different avenues of the business, depending upon what you're doing. If you're getting into stock photography, things of that nature, cataloging your inventory would definitely be a worthy investment for you, because when you shutter that data over to someone else, you know what information you need to shutter over to them, and you're able to quickly pull up that data as needed for usage basis. So outdoor photography, cataloging, they can definitely go hand in hand together. Alrighty. So anybody have anything they want to contribute right now? Got just a couple more minutes left of the show.
Yeah, bear with me 1 second. I was trying to get... Yeah, when it comes back to... when it comes to... Bear with me 1 second. My computer is slowing down.
You need more RAM there, Adam.
Yeah, no kidding.
Hey,
There we go.
Look at that truck. It's red.
Yeah. Very red. When it comes to taking pictures outdoors, one thing you might want to do if your camera supports it is to shoot in RAW format. A lot of cameras will shoot straight to a JPEG or straight to a TIFF file. If your camera supports it, try shooting to a RAW file. It's a little bit better so that whenever you take pictures outdoors, you may notice some areas that are real bright will sometimes be blown out. They'll be, and what I mean by blown out is that they'll be so bright that even if I tried to darken it, then sometimes it would still show up as pure white on the screen.
Yep.
And so, for instance, this one, this was shot in RAW, and so now that whenever I get back home and I'm getting ready to edit it, trying to get it set up just for prints or sharing online or, you know, whatever the case may be, since I shot it in RAW, I have a little bit more data so that I can easily come in here, darken it just a little bit, so that now that the sky shows up a little darker blue, well, you start to see some of the cement show up a little bit easier. but the truck is still red. You can still see that what the whole scene looks like. Also, when you're shooting in RAW, if you want to make subtle adjustments like bringing the shadows out just a little bit, it's easier to do. Just depends on the camera and the image settings that you choose. Because I've noticed over the years that sometimes people will send JPEGs that need to be edited, and I may notice that there's some shadows that are real dark, some that look just like this, and whenever I go to try to clean that up a little bit, sometimes it's won't look all that great, and even when I try to boost the shadows a lot, sometimes it gets blown out. So just an extra tip for everyone as they're taking pictures.
Yep. How about you, Chris?
I'm good. I think we covered it all. Yeah, I shoot RAW pretty much all the time. That's one setting that stays constant on the camera from day one and never change.
Yep. One of the most important things about RAW, and this was the first selling point that I had on RAW, and I haven't looked back since then, is that the RAW format allows you to get all of your data that's captured on the sensor into a file format, but it's uncompressed data. That means that anytime you edit it, anytime you output it, anytime you manipulate it, it's going to always be that raw, uncompressed data. One of the things that I dislike about JPEG is that it's compressed. So anytime I decide I want to manipulate the picture, I want to edit it or tweak it or change it, I am forced to save it to a JPEG format, or if I want, I can save it into another format. But I've already had some of that data thrown out once, and when I save it again, it's going to throw out more data again. And then if I decide later on I want to manipulate that picture again, I have to go back to that thrown out data file, and then I have to go throw out more data in order to use it once I save it again. When you're dealing with the raw file, that's all the data that showed up on that sensor. Period, cut and dry, end of discussion. So every time I manipulate it, the raw file on my Canon typically will be about 20 to 25 megs in size. The JPEGs typically can come out, if I use the large format, they come out to about 5 megs each with a large JPEG. Well, that raw file uncompressed is 20. If I take that raw file uncompressed and convert it to a TIFF, it then becomes about a 60 meg file. So think about that. 60 megs of data gets dropped into a JPEG file, and that 60 megs of data then becomes a 10 meg JPEG file. And then if I resave that file again, that 10 meg file may go down to a 2 meg file. And if I resave it again, that 2 meg file may go down to a 1 meg file. And that 1 meg may go down to a 300K, and that 300K may go to a 20K. And every time you throw out that data, you're throwing out precious bits of information that you could potentially use later on that you will never be able to get back. So dealing with RAW, you will have larger file sizes, but in the interest of being able to use your imaging later, RAW is going to be the way that you want to shoot, and then convert it out to a JPEG or convert it out to a TIFF file, and then use it how you want to from that point. So not only do you get the benefits of being able to manipulate that raw file, such as Adam had demonstrated with playing with the different sliders, you get all that original data that showed up on the sensor that you get to use, instead of using some of the data that's actually on the sensor.
My most useful, I think, would be white balance, correcting white balance. I leave it on auto all the time, and it's with JPEG, when you try to change white balances, you're ruining that picture. But
and the reason why typically for people who have never really played around with white balance, that's what turns your pictures either green or orange or red, or in some cases, very warm or very cold, is that every time when you shoot in JPEG, that white balance is locked into that picture because all the data is saved and stored and then it's thrown away to get you that JPEG. So then when you correct that white balance, you then have to throw data away in order to save it again. When you're dealing with the raw file, you can have your white balance set at 10,000 Kelvin, or you can have it set at 0 Kelvin, and you can manipulate that raw file and control that white balance just by sliding the slider. My first real usage of the RAW format, someone told me, "Oh, you get all the data," and I'm like, "Okay, that's cool." And I set my camera on to a black and white picture to take, and then I brought that picture into my computer so I can manipulate it. It was actually of a friend in her wedding dress. And I was like, oh, why does this say black and white there? Because I forgot I took the picture in black and white. And I changed it to the setting that I always have it at, which was called Faithful. And my black and white picture went color on me. And I was like, whoa. You know, just like that, like, well, hold on. This supposed to have been black and white. How is this color there? So then I got to talking to my friends online who were more into the technical side of the thing, and they explained to me that RAW captures everything. The JPEG will be locked in black and white or color, but the RAW is not locked in black and white or color. The RAW is all the data. It presents it to you in black and white because that's the setting that you told it that you wanted it, but it's not in black and white. It's just all the data. So yeah, RAW, I was sold from that point forward, and you know, I don't preach it to people. I just tell people try it out. It's a bigger file size. If you find that it's too big and you're not using it, shoot JPEG. It's a personal choice. But I never shoot JPEG exclusively. I shoot JPEG and I shoot RAW. And I use the RAW for any type of changes that I want to do to the picture, and I use the JPEG to immediately give the picture out to people. So that's it for me. Anybody have anything else they want to do before we cancel out the show for the day?
Nope.
All right. How about you, Chris? You good too?
We're good.
All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and close out the show, everybody. Have a great weekend. Look forward to talking with you guys again next week.